Hi there, this is a tutorial to get you to start thinking about how you can enhance your design using hand embroidery. You may have already used Bondaweb, the Bondaweb technique to put different fabrics or textured fabrics onto your design, and this is something that you can either do round the Bondaweb, on top of the Bondaweb, or just in other areas where there is no Bondaweb to help enhance your design and make things stand out or bring parts of your design together. You could buy skeins of embroidery threads like this, or you can, if you haven't got any of those, use reels of thread that you would sew with on the sewing machine, and use 3 or 4 of those thicknesses. The first thing you need to do is think about your design and where you would like to do your decoration. This isn't a technical demonstration on hand embroidery. This is to consider where you put your hand embroidery and placement to enhance your design, to make things stand out and make your design flow better if there are any gaps or any spaces. Or you might have left some plain areas like I have ready to fill up and to sew with hand embroidery as part of your design. There are lots and lots of clips on YouTube about how to technically do hand sewing that you can look up to help you, things like chain stitch, fly stitch, back stitch, cross stitch, even French knots, or just a running stitch, which you can see I've done some various different types on here for that. I'm going to demonstrate a very simple back stitch this afternoon, just to give you an idea. Again, you could go round shapes to make them stand out. This is particularly effective if you have got a bit of Sharpie pen or felt tip that's blurred a little bit. You can define the edge and make the shape stand out, or you can actually do other shapes where you want, just in plain areas, just to develop the pattern a bit more as well. I'm going to do that with some blue. So you just take some thread. Now, embroidery threads are usually 6 threads thickness, so when you take it off the thread, you take a little bit more than you would normally, because you're going to double this, and you're going to cut off what you think you need. The next bit's a bit tricky. You take out 2. You could use 3 if you want to, but I find 2 easier to then thread the sewing needle, and you twist it so that the thread comes apart. Now, this can be a bit tricky. It's sometimes quite good to have somebody to help you to do this, but you do need to keep the other part of the thread, the 4 strands, separate, ready to use later on. So you can just put those to the side so we don't have any wastage. And then you'll take your thread, cut the end so you've got a nice fresh end, pull it back between your fingers, and then thread your needle. I've only got very tiny needles at home at the moment because of shortages, so bear with me a moment. Pull your needle all the way through to the middle, and take the 2 end pieces, so the needle is trapped in the middle here. Okay, and take the 2 end pieces and do a knot in it. There are lots and lots, again, different ways of doing hand embroidery techniques. This is the way that I found the easiest, particularly if you're a beginner or you're learning. So you've got your needle and you've got your knot at the end, which is trap the 2 ends because you put the needle in the middle. This means you've now got a width of 4 strands, which means that it will show up more. Again, you can play around with your thickness if you wish to. I'm going to take a section here, and I like the idea of these chevrons, but I'm not going to go round them because sometimes that can be a little bit obvious depending on what your design is. I'm going to do a chevron back stitch, a freestyle off centre. You can draw it on with pencil if you wish to, but of course if you go off it or you go a bit wobbly, it will show. So if you are going to do that, I'd do it very lightly. So you pull your needle through, so your knot is at the back, and just check it's caught, the knot hasn't come through. And you're going to do yourself a little starting stitch. So just push the needle back through and check there's no loops on the back and nothing else is caught. You're then going to go a little bit further ahead. Put your needle in. I know it's tricky to see. Okay, don't pull it too hard and keep your hands stretching the fabric nice and tight, and then go back to where you started there. Okay, so you've gone ahead and then you've gone back to the stitch. Now, because I'm doing a V, I'm going to change my angle. Again, I'm doing it freehand. Go forward. Pull it, check there's no loops with your finger at the back, pull out. Because the shirt's nice and rigid fabric, you can actually do quite a lot of pulling. Push it back to where you started. Okay, check it's nice and flat. You can always put it on the table to do it. Again, because I'm doing a V shape, I'm going at an angle. Put the needle forward, bring it back to where you started. Stretch it out if you need to. If you have got a hoop, a wooden hoop, you can use one of those at home, but again, because we're limited on materials, I wouldn't expect everybody to have one of those. Bring it back and just keep going until you've got your shape, the size you want. As I said earlier, this is very much a creative tutorial. I want you to think about your placement, so where you're going to be putting your stitches. Can you do off-center shapes? Can you recreate some of the shapes in your patterns, in your stitching? Could you start combining different colours, thinking about the colours that you use? Could you recreate the colours from the background in the foreground? Thinking about your scale of your shapes. Can you do repeat shapes but change the scale? Could you take the basic, this is a fly stitch for example, could you take the idea of the fly stitch but make it more creative by changing the scale so it goes from bigger to smaller or smaller to bigger? Could you start combining some techniques? Really start thinking about where you do it. You know, you've got your, say you've got a basic back stitch with a gap in it here, okay, but then they get longer as they get to the bottom of the shape. So it's really thinking about your placement, your scale, your colours, your design to make your design stand up even better. And then if I can go a little bit closer, you can start to see some of my ideas coming together. A couple of little tips just as you finish off. You will find as you get to the end of a shape, you start to run out of your thread. Don't leave it to the last minute, otherwise you'll have real trouble finishing off your shape, but just push it to the back. Okay, so I've got lots going on the back. Okay, and then all you're going to do is 3 little stitches. Now, I know it's tricky to see, I'm going to try and hold it a little bit closer, but you literally just catch the fabric, tiny amounts. You don't want to see it on the front necessarily. And then you can do 3 little stitches. You can even stitch through the thread you've just done. 1, 2, 3, and then you can just cut that off before you run out of thread, because otherwise it'll be really tricky for that. So yeah, that's your hand embroidery. And again, I say, like you said, you can do it over Bondaweb, which you might have done, or you can just do it freestyle, or just certain areas. You might want to do on your shirt just your collar. You might want to do beautiful decoration all around your collar, or just all over your sleeves, for example. It's really up to you as part of your shirt challenge where you do your decorations and where you do your design. Have a go.